How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Weekly Wolf, episode 7. Today is going to be completely video game focused. So this is going to be more of a niche podcast. I will go back to making the more broad one soon. But I did want to make a podcast because there's a lot I want to talk about concerning video games, because that is of a big interest to me. So let's get right into it. What I want to first talk about is the Xbox showcase that Microsoft showed off yesterday, because that is fairly recent. And first off, I'm starting to miss E3. There's been no E3 this year because of the coronavirus. E3 was completely canceled. And so instead we've had these spread out announcements from companies. They might be presentations that they've put together. They might be just announcements they make on Twitter or something like that. But these short presentations that these companies have been doing, the reason I miss E3 is because E3, everything was together. You knew it was like with 1 week, and you knew that this company was doing something this day, and the next day this company was doing something else. And now everything's spread out. You don't know when the presentations are going to be, and so there's a lot of hype behind it. And people are talking about it like, oh, when's the next presentation going to be? And then the actual presentations, when they've come, like the Microsoft one, for instance, they've been disappointing, to say the least. Like, there was a Nintendo Direct Mini this week, and there has been so much hype concerning Nintendo Directs. You know, oh, when's the next Nintendo Direct? Nintendo's got to announce something, too, about these Mario remasters, these rumored Mario remasters that are coming. That's the remaster of Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. There's been hype and speculation about that. And so Nintendo, like at midnight, Nintendo released a statement on Twitter, and this was like a few days ago, saying tomorrow there will be a Nintendo Direct Mini where we focused on games by our third partners. And I guess they were trying to control the hype. They were trying to tell you, look, this is not going to be a big presentation, so don't expect much. But then they actually had the Nintendo Direct Mini, and this was on the July 20th. So this was on Monday. And so they dropped the announcement on Sunday. Or actually, I guess you could say Monday, because it was midnight. And so this Nintendo Direct Mini was on the 20th. And they showed 5 games. They showed WWE Battlegrounds, which is like a cartoon wrestling game. They had an update for Cadence of Hyrule, which I never even played that game. That game came out a while ago. They showed off Rogue Company, which is a free-to-play third-person multiplayer shooter, which it looks like something fun to play on the Switch, but that game's already, I believe, in beta, and I believe people already know about it. So that was just kind of a weird announcement. And then the last 2 announcements were that Shin Megami Tensei 3 is getting a remake treatment on the Switch, and Shin Megami Tensei 5 is also coming out. And it's actually a Nintendo exclusive, which that's pretty cool for fans of Shin Megami Tensei. So basically, this presentation was for the Shin Megami Tensei fans, because that was their big announcement, that the Shin Megami Tensei 5 will be a Nintendo exclusive. The next entry in that series will be only on the Nintendo Switch. So that was a great announcement for fans of that. But when you look at that, that's only really, I said 5, but that's only 4 games, because one was talking about an update for Cadence of Hyrule. And this Direct was only like 8 minutes long, so it definitely was a mini. But like, I get that Nintendo was trying to die down the hype around it by making an announcement, but why even do a Nintendo Direct like this? Like, these could have been announcements on Twitter or something, and they could have just dropped a trailer on their YouTube. Like, for Paper Mario Origami King, they just dropped that trailer, and that just out of nowhere, and that was pretty awesome to see that. They didn't put it in a Nintendo Direct. So I don't get why they did this Nintendo Direct. I guess they just did it because they knew people have been asking for one, and they're like, "Oh, we just got to do one. Let's do it." But it seemed last minute, and it seemed rush, and naturally, many people were disappointed. Like I mentioned, if you were not a Shin Megami Tensei fan, you were disappointed in this Direct. And I know I've gone completely off topic because I mentioned I was going to talk about the Xbox Showcase. But I did want to give an example of just some disappointment that's come from these announcements and these presentations. And the Xbox Showcase is no exception. So I went through the Xbox Showcase. I watched it later in the day. For me, the most exciting announcement, or really the most exciting thing about it, was the gameplay of Halo Infinite, because I'm a big Halo fan and I really wanted to see some gameplay of it. And the gameplay looks good. The game looks really good. The game looks like it's a cross between the first Halo and Halo 3 gameplay. A little bit of Halo 2, but mostly focusing on Halo 1 and Halo 3. Which I think that's a great way to, revitalize the Halo franchise. Because Halo for me kind of fell off after 4. Like 4 was okay, but there was a lot of issues with it, specifically the Forerunner enemies, or whatever they were called. The Forerunner enemies were a bit annoying. But as far as the story of Halo since Halo 3, it's been hard to follow. I don't know where they're going with it. I'm not sure how this new ring world ties into the events of the previous games. I remember they were fighting a Covenant faction, or it was like a splint off of the Covenant, because the Covenant doesn't exist anymore. And then they were also fighting the Forerunner enemies. And Master Chief was disobeying orders, and Halo 5 kind of I got a lot of people disappointed in the story because you didn't play as Chief much. You just played as the other team, and you had to hunt Chief down, and Cortana's going crazy. And so I'm not really following the story anymore, but the developers do look like they're trying to return to Halo at its roots. And I think that's a pretty neat endeavor. And I'm looking forward to seeing more about the game. Now, the gameplay didn't blow me away or anything. It just looked like more Halo, which is great. It definitely looks better than what we got in Halo 5. But it's nothing that blew me away and got me, oh, I'm so excited. The game looks fun. I'll definitely get it and play it and enjoy it, and then that will be it. Microsoft made a bunch of other announcements too, like, Forza Motorsport is coming, State of Decay 3 is coming, Rare's got a game called Everwild. They talked about some expansions. So they did have, first party games to show off, which was good. Exomecha looks pretty cool. It looks like a first-person shooter that was dreamed of by Michael Bay. You're running around shooting at players while these big metal robots are fighting above you. That's pretty cool. Some Sega developers are teaming back up with Square Enix for a 3D platformer called Balan Wonderworld. That's pretty neat. It's not a game that I'd be interested in playing, but it's cool that they showed that off. Showed off the next RPG from Obsidian, I think that's how you say it, called Avowed. So Microsoft's definitely showing off their first party studios. Oh, they showed Psychonauts 2. They showed Ninja Theory's Hellblade 2. So they definitely use this showcase to show off what they got from their first party studios, which is good. That's what Microsoft needs. But overall, there was just a disappointment there with this presentation, because there was not really a game that kind of wowed people or anything like that. And a lot of these were just trailers as well. that goes back to the whole we need to see more gameplay topic. But like Microsoft just doesn't. It feels like they don't have the excitement of exclusives that Sony does. I mean, because Sony, they have Spider-Man, they have Ratchet and Clank, they have Last of Us, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and those are all amazing first-party exclusive titles. Microsoft has been banking on Halo for a long time. They've been banking on Gears of War, Forza Horizon. I know they're trying to change. I know they've bought many studios like Obsidian, and they have Rare, which Rare's always, their stuff's just always been disappointment to me. I don't know how ever Wild's going to be. It's got kind of the same art style as Breath of the Wild, so I don't really know how that game's going to be, but I've just always been disappointed. Since Microsoft bought Rare, really, I've just been disappointed with the stuff they've been putting out. I feel like they haven't really put anything good out since they were with Nintendo on N64. So I get Microsoft's trying, but they just don't have those just very exciting IPs. Halo and Gears of War have just been going on forever. And people love those franchises. They do get excited. But I guess we just want to see more exciting new stuff that's similar to like what Sony has. The thing is, too, is these aren't really Xbox exclusives because they're also coming to PC. And that's another thing with Microsoft is they don't seem to care about console sales. They want you to buy the Game Pass. They want you to buy subscription. They're all about the subscription model because that's what's making them money. They want you to be able to play their games anywhere, on the PC, on a phone, through the streaming service that they're doing. I forget what it's called. They want you to play on the Xbox. But the thing is with that is they're creating the most powerful console. They're creating the Series X, and they're toting out how powerful it is. And yet, still all their games are coming to PC, which the PC can be the most powerful system if you build it the right way. Those games have looked better for years now. They're years past what consoles are doing. Games on PC have been looking great for a while. And also there's the fact that, and it's been unclear, but Microsoft's been saying that their titles, their games coming to Xbox One, I mean not Xbox One, but Xbox Series X, at least their first party titles will not be exclusive to Series X. Like you could also play it on Xbox One, and that was the case with when they showed off Halo Infinite. They said, you can play it on the base Xbox One, so we're talking about the big VCR model, and you can play it on the Xbox Series X. And they just discontinued the Xbox One X, which was a strange decision because if you're trying to cater your games to an audience with all your consoles, why would you discontinue the Xbox One X? Because I'm sure the Xbox One X is not that far behind, at least when it comes to the games that are going to be played on it, to the Series X. Like the Series X is going to be more powerful, but the games on it are not going to, they probably won't take full advantage of that system until a couple of years have passed. And right now, they're definitely not taking full advantage because they have to develop their games for the base Xbox One console. Could you imagine what this new Halo is how it's gonna run on the VCR model? It's probably not gonna run that great, and I'm sure the developers had that in mind, and that's why when you watch the gameplay of Halo Infinite, it didn't look as good as it possibly could. Now, it definitely looked great, but they might not be pushing it to the extent that they can because it's also going to work on the original Xbox One. I upgraded to an Xbox One X, and I'm glad I did because I couldn't imagine these next generation games running on the VCR model. That's just outdated at this point. The Xbox One X is at least a big step up from that console. But yeah, Microsoft is just it's their exclusives that is, I feel like, is, well, it's not necessarily hurting them. It's just disappointing to see all these great announcements from Sony and not from Microsoft. Because Microsoft is making money. I mean, Game Pass is a huge success. And like I mentioned, that's what they want to focus on. They want people to buy Game Pass. I have Game Pass because it comes bundled with Live. So for only like a $5 extra, you can get, all this access to all these games. And I love Game Pass because you can get games, you can get their first party games right when they come out. You can just download it and play it. You don't have to pay anything but the subscription model that you're paying for. Because you can pay Xbox Live for $10, or for $15 you can get the Game Pass, which has hundreds of games. You can just download whenever you want and play. And when their first party games come out, you can play those too. So I'm sure Halo Infinite will be on Game Pass. So you don't even have to pay the $60 that comes for it. So yeah, I definitely agree. Game Pass has been really great for Microsoft, and it's been a great idea, and I applaud Microsoft for that. But overall, I think the general consensus is that this Xbox showcase was disappointing. Their last showcase was disappointing as well because they had made the announcement they were going to show off gameplay footage, next gen gameplay footage for the first time. This was back in June, and they maybe only showed like a minute of gameplay. The rest was just cinematic trailers. And so at least with this presentation, they showed more gameplay this time. But overall, I think people, like I said, I miss E3. People are missing E3 because there's just been a lot of disappointment. Like the Sony conference was great. I think people love that because of all the games they showed off. But just these spreading out of announcements and presentations throughout the summer, it's just lacked the excitement of a week of E3. E3 was always a big event. I know E3 is not necessarily needed, but it was always a big event for everybody. But I'm going to go ahead and move into my next topic because this is something I want to talk about. I want to talk about Paper Mario. So, Paper Mario the Origami King came out, and there's been a lot of mixed response to that game. Now, I haven't played the game, but I've talked to a friend who's played it, and he's told me all about it. So the writing is great. The game is beautiful. It's fun to explore the world. The world is very creative. And the combat ring, the little puzzles, the ring system is pretty fun. It gets better as you play the game. And it's more of an adventure game, if anything else. And I believe that's what Nintendo considers it, is as an adventure game. Because you're going around and you're throwing these confetti all around to cover up holes. And really, the main issue that people are having with the game is that when it comes to battles, is that there's no experience system. So there's really not that much incentive to complete the battles. Like, you can get coins and confetti, yes. But the coins and confetti are found everywhere in the world that you aren't going to run out, You might run out a little bit, but there's always coins and confetti to be found in the world. So there's not a lot of incentive to do the battles. I remember when Nintendo themselves was showing off gameplay at the Treehouse, they were avoiding the battles themselves. And I'm like, well, why would you want to avoid the battles? Wouldn't you want to show those off? And people are saying, the ring system, the little puzzle that they incorporated into the battles is fun, but they just want experience system. And it just seems like Nintendo is just ignoring these fans that want those RPG elements back. And all it would take is to just add a little bit of experience system. That's all they would have to do to fix that. But ever since Super Paper Mario, we haven't had a traditional, Paper Mario RPG since Thousand Year Door. And at this point, it just seems like Nintendo's just forgot about that. Because we've had Super Paper Mario, we had Sticker Star, Color Splash, and now Origami King. And at this point, we're never going to go back to the RPG formula. I don't think we are. The excuse that Nintendo gave years ago was that we already had an RPG series with Mario and Luigi, which that was a great series, but Mario and Luigi can't replace Paper Mario. Plus, the studio that made Mario and Luigi went bankrupt, so I don't even think we're going to see any more Mario and Luigi series anymore. I haven't really looked into what happened to that studio, if anyone bought them. I don't think Nintendo bought them or anything. But I just don't think that Paper Mario is going to make a return to that RPG that fans want. And I was been reading this interview because there was a interview done with Kensuke Tanabe, the producer of Paper Mario, and they asked a lot of questions. The interviewer asked a lot of questions about, are you aware of the fan complaints? And I'm going to kind of talk about answers to that. Okay, so here's the question asked. The most recent Paper Mario games were criticized by some for perceived simplification in both story and battles compared to past games. Were you aware of fan concern, and did you seek it to address it with the Switch version? Okay, so that's another thing. There, a lot of these past Mario games have been simplified. It's nowhere near the story in battles is nowhere near it was as Thousand Year Door. And even like Super Paper Mario, that wasn't an RPG, but the story was insane in that game. Like, the story was crazy. It's what you've never seen in Mario games before. But here's what his response was. Here is what Tanabe said. He said, I do look through the opinions of fans once a game is released. As there are cases where I can't address those opinions exactly as fans want, I try to challenge myself to other new fun ideas. What I always keep in mind, though, is to do as much as I can so that players can enjoy new and unique game experiences. I'm confident that if you play Paper Mario the Origami King, you'll understand just how many ideas we've managed to pack into one game. Okay, so that was his response to the criticism about the simplification in both story and battles. And to me, he's saying that he's saying he does look through the opinions, like he's aware of what fans want, and he's saying he can't exactly address that, but he likes to have new fun ideas in the Paper Mario games. So it sounds like basically he's saying like he's aware of the criticism, but like he doesn't care. Like, he just wants to put these new and creative ideas into these games. But like, you can have new and creative ideas but still retain that RPG gameplay. Like I mentioned, all you had to do in Paper Mario Origami King was add some experience points. Here's another question. The question asked by the interviewer: is it difficult to find a balance that pleases all Paper Mario fans, particularly hardcore players who want more RPG elements, such as experience points, versus more casual players looking for an approachable experience? Okay, so here was Tanabe's response. First, Nintendo's philosophy on game creation is that we don't ignore casual players in creating our games. This is also true for games such as those in the Metroid Prime series that at first glance look like they are only aimed at core gamers. With that in mind, what we've done in the Paper Mario series is put a lot of work, particularly into the puzzle-solving elements of the game, so that they can be enjoyed by core users. So for example, in Paper Mario the Origami King, players need to guess the weak points of bosses based on their characteristics and search for the solution to defeat them. Otherwise, they won't be able to win these battles. This is an adventure game after all, so it wouldn't be right if the battles didn't have some kind of puzzle solving element. Of course, we've also added in a system for casual players where they can use coins in battles to get help from the spectating toads. Okay, so there's a lot in that statement that he gave to that question. Okay, first off, the interview question was saying, how do you find the balance to the hardcore players who want more RPG elements such as experience points versus the casual players looking for more approachable experience? And with this response at Tanabe Game, he didn't really answer that. To him, he's saying that the puzzles that are in the battles, the ring system, that's for the core players. And they're appeasing to the casual players by having things like using coins in battles to get help from toads to make the battles easier. So he's saying, to him, that's appeasing to both the hardcore and the casual audience by having puzzles in these battles, but also letting you use coins to make them easier. And that's not what the interviewer was asking. That's not what fans are talking about. We're talking about we want more of RPG elements back. We want experience points back. You know, if the turn-based system from the first two games is gone, you know, we at least want some experience points, reasons to complete these battles. And it seems like Tanabe does not get that. He's not, you know, he's not calling this, of course, he's not calling it an RPG. He's calling it an adventure game. So there you go. It's like Nintendo just forgot that Paper Mario used to be an RPG series. That's what it started off as. And now it's not. I mean, it still I haven't played it, but you know, but like I said, this is from feedback from my friends and from other people I've heard about. It still looks like a really fun game, but it seems like Nintendo, and especially in this interview that they, you know, like the producer, he just does not care what the fans have been asking for years and years and years, that we want a more traditional RPG Paper Mario experience. Like, you can throw in all your new creative ideas that you want. You can have these ring battle systems. You can have confetti. You can have the paint from Color Splash, the stickers or whatever. But you can do all that and appeal to the RPG audience as well. It's not that hard. And to them, it feels like they can't do that. To them, they don't consider it an RPG. They're not going to put those RPG elements in there. They just don't care. That's what it seems like. So that's just my rant on Paper Mario and the direction that they've been taking for years now. And granted, this game does look a lot better than Color Splash. You know, I will probably play it. I'll probably enjoy it. But I know it's not what fans have wanted. And they were hoping, you know, tons of people were hoping when the Origami King was announced that this would be a return to the formula, because the trailer made a big deal about partners returning. But then, of course, you got the little snippet of the battle system, and people started to have their doubts, and expectations, you know, were lowered in that regard. It just it feels like a lot of Nintendo's decisions, especially like with these Nintendo Directs, have just been tone deaf to a mass audience. Like, for example, in the Pokemon Direct they did, Pokemon Snap returning was a huge announcement. And at the end of that Direct, they said, you know, tune in next week for a one more big announcement about Pokemon. And people were speculating, oh man, what could this be? And then when it came, it was just talking about a Pokemon mobile game. Like, why would you you know, say, hey, tune in next week for another big announcement, and then it's just a mobile game, when the big announcement was really Pokemon Snap coming back? So, the Nintendo Direct Mini that I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, they didn't need to do a Direct about those 4 games that they showed off and an update that they could have made announcements. I love Nintendo. I love the Switch. I think the Switch is the I mean it's my favorite system because I don't get a lot of time to play on the TV, which is why I don't have a PlayStation, because I know I could never have time to get into their amazing first party exclusives. So I love my Switch because I can play it anywhere. I just wish Nintendo would I don't know. I just feel like they would listen to their fans better. But they've always just done their own thing. It seems they've never really, even in competition with other companies, they've always just done their own thing. They've not seemed to worry about what Microsoft is doing, what Sony is doing. They're just doing their own thing because the Switch is selling amazingly well. It's the top selling system. It's selling more than PlayStation, Xbox. Everyone wants to buy a Switch. So I mean, Nintendo could release. People are making comments that Paper Mario is going to be the last major game that Nintendo releases this year, and that that might be the case. But if that is the case, Nintendo's got a lot of money. They're still selling Switches like crazy. They're not going to run out of money, so they could not release any more games for the rest of this year, and they'd be fine. People really, they've been talking about these Super Mario Remaster rumors for months now, and I think people are they really want to hear announcements about that. They really want to hear more news from Nintendo, and I get that Nintendo said the coronavirus has affected things. I get that. And I also get that Nintendo just does things at their own pace. They'll just drop, they just drop a trailer for Paper Mario just out of the blue. They'll just drop announcements like that just out of nowhere. They'll come out with weird, crazy things like Ring Fit Adventure, which also sold really well, and now it's like everyone wants that title and you can't get it anywhere because it's sold out everywhere. Especially because people are stuck inside. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about for today, for this podcast. I've dragged this on for more than 30 minutes now, but there's just a lot. I love video games. There's a lot. I love talking about them. I love reading news about them. Sometimes I read more news about games and watch more YouTube videos about games than I actually do playing them. Because I just love talking about them. I love looking at them and just discussing them. So if you're a video game fan, I hope you enjoy this podcast, and thank you for listening.